Hello, welcome to Sterlo's Wrap.
Oh, straight through!
Bank, take advantage of it.
Standard applause!
It's a stupid question.
It's not.
I have far greater expectations of you than that.
Oh, yes.
He's gone all the way!
Now, he's popular, he's a great leader, he's the mentality of this football team.
Oh, and another one from Cleary.
Well, it doesn't get much better, does it?
Absolutely outstanding, and the finish is just as good.
It's rugby league, isn't it?
Hello, welcome to Sterlo's Wrap for another week. 15 rounds of the Premiership done, and we've got State of Origin 2 only a few days away. Great to have Peter Sterling back in the studio. What's with the...
Well, mate...
Did you get the memo? Or?
I feel like we're part of the Johnny Cash tribute band. I don't know what we're playing, but we're certainly dressed for the occasion.
Hopefully not Folsom Prison, Pete.
Yeah, more sombre occasions normally you'd wear this, but I'm feeling in a good mood.
Well, you're saying Queensland's Origin chances are doomed for failure, are they? Given the dress here, we dress for a wake or something.
Well, it's interesting. Obviously, the side has been named now, and there are some surprises. I'm certainly not going to tell Queensland how to select their side, but the big question, obviously, that was going to be answered was Reece Walsh, whether he would be brought into Origin after 7 games, I think you were saying. So, straight into fullback, moving Valentine Holmes onto the wing. Big ask for a young man, but he's obviously revelled in the pressure of NRL football, but now he's got to take that into a bigger stage. It will be a crowd that will make it much easier for him, but you've still got to get the job done. So, there are a couple of surprises there. Reece Walsh, Andrew McCulloch has played a little bit of Origin before, very experienced player, comes in, obviously, with no Reid Marnie there to deputise for the injured Harry Grant. Andrew McCulloch, I guess, is a safe option.
Tightens the defence up.
Yeah, it does. I like Molo. I think he's I'm not surprised. He's an Origin player, and I think that he can give enormous impact when he comes onto the field at whatever stage Paul Green wants to introduce him to the game. Jai Arrow goes to an edge, and he'll handle that fairly comfortably.
So does Arrow moving to an edge explain the no change at centre with Capewell staying there?
No, I don't think so. No, because Fafita comes back to the bench, so I think that was more about how they wanted to
but does Arrow help the defence on that side of the ground, meaning they don't need to make a change in the centre?
No, I think that they've opted to run with Capewell as the best option there. The other players that were mentioned, of course, I guess were Will Chambers, Opacek, and even the Hammer. I think that they felt that Capewell, in a different game on a different surface in front of a home crowd, as he did on 3 occasions last year at Origin level, will be better than he was, and will be able to nullify some of this Queensland, New South Wales attack. But the Reece Walsh is the big one, of course.
You saw him on Saturday. You did the game for radio. That was a tight game where he had a couple of shots at field goal in the end. Couldn't nail the big play. He had a on and off day on Saturday.
Yeah, more on. He was very, very dangerous. And the field goal attempt, probably wasn't in great position. I don't think the side helped him actually where they manoeuvred to have the shot. But he looked very, very dangerous. He adds a lot of energy. Obviously, the wingers are going to try and make it as easy as possible for him. Valentine Holmes, Kyle Felt probably was a little bit fortunate there. Mulatalo, I think, is 19th man. So
no Xavier Coates either.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's to me, that's huge as well. Now, if he's not in the best 2 wingers in Queensland, then I'm a very, very poor judge. Obviously, his club side is struggling, and maybe there were some defensive issues for him in game 1. But to be honest, I thought he'd be one of their first players chosen.
Let's look at the Blues team. Freddie's named a squad after everyone bagged Queensland for naming a squad. Freddie jumped on the bandwagon. Well done, Freddie. Mr. Contrarian. But as we have a look at the graphic here, you can see, really, it's 16 of the 17 probably are locked in stone. It'd most likely, you'd think, be Crichton straight in for Trebojevic, maybe Finucane for Trebojevic. The only other option would be that both of them come in and Liam Martin loses his place on the bench, but the starting team is pretty straight up and down. It'll be either Paulo or Haas to come into the front row.
I think it'll be Paulo, and I think it will be as predicted that Angus Crichton will be in the 17. Liam Martin will retain his position, and I think you'll find that Dale Finucane will be 19th or 20th man alongside Campbell Graham. And I would imagine because Api Coruscant was named as 18th man, there was a plan around that in game one. I don't see why that would change in game two. So very healthy position for New South Wales. They go in with that little bit less pressure than the opposition because there is the safety net of a decider if need be. Not so for Queensland, of course, but Freddie would be very, very happy that outside of Jake Trbojevic, he didn't have to make too many other changes through suspension or injury. Most got through unscathed.
Yeah. Big week for Reece Walsh, though. The teenager. He's played 7 NRL games. The second least experience behind Ben Ikin, who was picked in 95 after playing 4. He's going to know he's in a contest this week, the young man.
Look, it's exciting. Yeah. I think, it's one of the great stories, and there's so many around Origin games. It's one of the lead stories that this young man who went from the Brisbane Broncos to the New Zealand Warriors mid-season, we'd heard about him, we hadn't seen him. He's exploded onto the scene, but the pressure of Origin, we've seen players buckle under it. We've seen some that haven't come out of the experience that well, and it did affect them for a period of time in their careers. But Reece Walsh, he plays with a smile on his face. All the talent in the world, but you can bet your life that New South Wales will make it as difficult as possible. Be putting up the high kicks whenever they can, putting some along the ground, making him work there as well, and working him over defensively, seeing where he is in the defensive line, and with Nathan Cleary's kicking game, they'll be looking to try and catch him out as well.
Well, Queensland have got a history of picking players with unconventional build-ups to Origin. They pick blokes out of reserve grade, they pick youngsters, and generally they aim up. So let's see what happens on Sunday night.
I think this young man will be very good. I think he'll come in, and I think he will justify the faith being shown in him by the Queensland selectors. Whether there's enough around him for them to force a decider in Sydney for game 3, only time will tell.
Let's talk club footy. Looking back on round 15, let's go back to Thursday night. Wow. Rabbitohs 46, Broncos 0. And the Drums are beating again at Red Hill.
Well, not great reports coming out on the weekend as to player unrest, and that never reads well, and it doesn't end well either. Before
you get into your analysis of that, how can there be player unrest? Well, what are the players got to have unrest about?
Well, what they're complaining about is a lack of being able to form a relationship with the coach because they find him vague, they find awkward conversations, they find not the right communication coming back. The disappointing thing about it is that there are no names generally to the players who are making these statements. I guess the guys who are obviously front and centre are the ones who we know have been told that they can move on, or not playing first grade. So your Pangai, your Lodges, these guys have complaints there. I'm not saying that they are the ones that those quotes are coming from, but they are the face of that, I suppose.
Is it not a bit rich that any of the players are complaining about what's happening with the coaching staff when they're getting flogged like this?
Well, they made the point on the Sunday Footy show, that the only thing that players can do is to train and work as hard as they possibly can, and be ready to go on the weekends and be concerned about their performance. And if you've got 17 guys who are going out there and giving their very best in their own individual performance, that will add up to a team performance. Yeah. And we're not seeing that. And again, we're like a broken record with the Brisbane Broncos. When things got too hard here, they got too hard. And once South Sydney gets on a little bit of a roll, then they are a side who can score points. And just the point I wanted to make here, we give a lot of praise, and rightly so, to the precision of the South Sydney attack. I want to point out the role played by the defenders, by the decoys. Campbell Graham there. You see, he avoids contact. This time you've got Dane Gagai fully aware that he can't initiate contact and he's got to get to the inside shoulder. And finally, Jacob Host, there is some contact, but again, it's the inside shoulder. So whilst we're praising the ball work and the precision passing of Adam Reynolds and Cody Walker and Latrell Mitchell, none of that happens if somebody mucks up in the lead-up play. And South are very, very aware, just to explain, I don't want to get too technical, but the responsibility of the decoy is to not create contact, to go through the line, and if there is any kind of contact, it can't be with the outside shoulder. And what we mean by that is the outside shoulder of the defender, the one closest to the ball. It's black and white in the bunker. If you get it wrong, doesn't matter really, there's not a lot of discretion in that regard. If you hit the outside shoulder, and you don't really have to be that close to the football, we've seen on occasion, they will call it no try. So I just wanted to praise the guys who you don't see in those kind of movements, who do a very important job by attracting a defender and making it easier to create that overlap. But the responsibility on them is a big one, because if they get it wrong, we don't even look to see what happens out the back. The form of Cameron Murray as well, I think has probably been a little bit overlooked. In Origin 1, I thought he was an absolute star. But just before halftime here, the main kicker, Adam Reynolds, gets nailed. Cameron Murray puts the kick through, stays alive, and then comes up to make the following play. Now, as I say, this is just before half-time. From that, the next set, Cameron Murray into first receiver, finds Adam Reynolds out wide, Campbell Graham scores, and all of a sudden the score is getting well out of the reach of the Brisbane Broncos before the break. So his role in so many different ways for South Sydney and for New South Wales is so important. I thought he was an absolute star for the Blues in game one. A lot of other players got the raps. But I think that he's playing in great touch in a couple of different positions. Like, he obviously played for the Blues on the edge. But there you saw that the understanding of last tackle, I've got to come up with the right play here, and he did it all himself.
Indeed. Friday night footy out at Penrith. The Panthers 38 over the Roosters 12. The Roosters had all the ball, and I literally mean all the ball, for the first 5 minutes of the game. They led 12-0. Rhea Hargreaves inspirational in the opening exchanges, but once Penrith got some football, they blew them off the park.
Well, the most impressive thing about this was when they got the football and got to the other end of the field, they kicked early. That's courageous and brave. And you know, this try set up for Stephen Crichton. Like, I asked Nathan Cleary on the weekend, was this instinct or was it a planned move? And he said, well, a little bit of both. But he followed that up with an absolutely brilliant display of kicking, so much so that James Tedesco, when Channel 9's Danica Mason interviewed him at halftime, he said, well, we're being kicked to death. And they were. The most difficult kicks in the game are actually to find the in-goal area from outside the 20 metres. Now, Nathan Cleary, he did it continuously in wet conditions. When the short kick was needed, you know, he's a master at those now. But the ones outside the 20, they take hours and hours and hours of work, and it takes great execution. And I thought it was just reward that he put the high kick up later in the evening and was able to get across and score the try himself. So outside of his ball work and his direction of play and basically orchestrating where the team needs to go, the kicking game was magnificent. As you point out, after they went 12-0 down and had no football, the kick for Crichton, I just thought, you know, wow, that's a player who's seeing the game as well as anybody has ever seen.
It's slow motion for him at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
They forced 5 dropouts in the first half.
Yep.
And Jerome Luai had a couple of kicks close to the line too and nailed them. They just don't make mistakes.
No, they don't. And if the ball goes wider, we've seen Stephen Crichton put the little left foot kick through. We've seen Kickow, who wasn't there the other night, kick through as well. So they're all aware of, if they explore last tackle, they understand that if we can get the right kick in, then you know we've put pressure on the defence. We've tried to open them up to score a try, but if the kick's the necessary option, then they're all capable of doing that. You mentioned the front rowers, and we've sort of spoken a bit in the wrap in the past about who are the best front rowers. You know, and we've thrown a few up, but I think if you're going to talk about best front rowers, there's got to be a sense of intimidation about them. You know, the game that I've known for 40 years, yeah, there's got to be something fearsome about those guys up front. And the early work from Rhea Hargreaves, as you pointed out, and he maintained it too, even when the momentum was against them. You know, his form in the last couple of weeks, it's been exactly that. It's been fierce. This guy is right up there with him in that department. I think he does it probably in a quieter manner, but Fisher Harris is an absolute leader of this Penrith team, and it's done with aggression and it's done with desire, and that all adds up to a really strong package. So I find it hard to split these two. In fact, I'm not going to, but when you're talking about the best front rowers in the game, and you know, Junior Paulo is a very different type of front rower. He's got footwork, you know, not what you normally see. A team's intimidated by him? Probably not. Maybe intimidated by the difference that he has as a front rower. But when you actually come to the physical aspect of our game and the aggression of our game, JWH and JFH, they lead the way.
They'll be the front rowers for New Zealand in the World Cup.
How good?
They will be awfully hard to beat just on the back of those two. They're brilliant. I bet the Tigers would like to have one of them, if not both. 66-16. What was the score at half time? Was it 40-0?
Yeah.
How can that happen?
Well, they were better at point a minute for much of the game. And they scored, I think, 5 tries in the first 15 minutes. So it was gone. And
just when we thought the Tigers, and I know we thought maybe they'd turn a little bit of a corner after back-to-back wins. They were shooting for 3 wins in a row, and then Para blew them away. And now this has happened.
Yeah. And look, Craig Bellamy came out and said, look, I haven't seen a game like that. I haven't been involved in a game like that. In the first 20 minutes, everything went their way. Every bounce went their way, and nothing went the West Tigers' way. But I keep making the point that somehow you've got to draw a line in the sand. Who was it who flew over the sideline and knocked the ball back in over the weekend? I can't. We've seen Pappenhausen do it in the past, but plays like that, dived over the sideline and knocked the ball back in. Those kind of plays stop momentum. Yeah, and that's what you've got to somehow be able to do against the great sides when they've got a lot of football and they're on a roll. You've got to find a way to stop it. The West Tigers don't have that ability. They just don't have that play in them, unfortunately. Now, you mentioned the front rowers that we were just speaking about in Warrior Hargreaves and Fisher Harris. The West Tigers could do with one of those. Well, I've been reading that Dale Finucane is possibly going to be leaving the Melbourne Storm because of salary cap constraints.
Sign him now.
Well, this is a guy you'd play overs for because 100%. He's the kind of player that we're talking about. You know, in my opinion, the West Tigers do not need a Pangai Junior because I can't trust Pangai to produce every week. And there are too many players in the West Tigers lineup who I have that appraisal about. This man here who just threw the pass to put Cameron Munster over, every week you get a 9 out of 10, 8.5, 9 out of 10 performance from him. And you get that during the week at training and in leadership ways that everybody else picks up.
Many people, you look at that Tigers outfit, we've covered them a lot this year, and you wonder where the leadership comes from.
Exactly.
If you sign a Dale Finucane, you've got a frontline leader who's not going to let that happen on the weekend.
And whilst he looks battered and beaten, because he's still got plenty of good football in him. Craig Bellamy came out, and I think Brad Fittler agreed. He's playing the best football of his career now. He had to come into the Origin squad because his form demanded it. And he can maintain that for a period of time to come yet. So if you are looking to change, I don't like using the word culture, but that's part of it. If you're looking to change something in your club and take steps in the right direction, a Dale Finucane is exactly that. And again, he's the kind of player that you would pay overs for, especially when you look at who the West Tigers have paid overs for in the past.
Yeah.
You know, you will never be disappointed with the purchase of Dale Finucane on any front.
Can I ask you this, Pete? I think it would be fair to assume the Tigers' season's done for. Now, I know there's a congestion amongst the bottom of the top 8.
I don't see them storming.
They can't. On the basis of that, they couldn't do that. They've got the Jock Maddens, the Simpkins, and a few Tigers fans I spoke to across the weekend say there's some real emerging talent at flag and even at cup level. And you look at that Tigers NRL roster, there's a sameness in some of the names that have been there over the last few years. Is it not time now to try and just get some young kids in and get some football under their belt with a look to rebuilding the club, with maybe a Finucane coming in or some fresh blood next year?
You've got to be careful, Matt. I take your point, and I can understand the frustration of West Tigers fan in maybe not seeing that in preference to what they are seeing. But you also don't want to burn these young blokes coming up. You know, if they're not going to be winning games, you don't want them up there and being a part of big score lines and losses week on week, because that doesn't do their football development any good. Certainly, bring them in, pick some times, and manage that. I think certainly introduce them to the top grade, but you don't want to scar them either for what is to come. You want them fresh of mind when they become regular first graders. But I think there's certainly some options there in the second half of the season. Look, they're not out of finals contention mathematically, and they are close enough, if good enough. I don't think that they are going to play finals football. So you don't basically wipe a season off, because that's not the way to approach it. You're still trying to win as many football games as you can, but I think you can certainly blood some young players at times, give them a week or two up there, bring them back in and develop them that way. Give them a taste of it, let them know what it's all about, and they'll be better for it next season and seasons to come.
All right, Sunday footy up on the Gold Coast to wind up an excellent Beanies for Brain Cancer round again in season 2021. Manly 56, that's the latest 50-point scoreline, over the Titans 24, who led the game at half-time. It was all turbo again, and Manly, they blew them off the park. Another example of blowing a team off the park.
Well, they led the game substantially at half-time at the time. I think it was 24-6, 24-8, and they'd played some good football. To be honest, the tries that they scored came from kicks. So it wasn't as though they were breaking Manly down necessarily defensively, but again, if I'm talking about Brisbane as a broken record with the Titans can score points. They just can't stop them. And Manly, with Tom Trbojevic back in the lineup, once they got on a roll, then it was just one-way traffic, and it was a capitulation by the Titans. And if I'm Justin Holbrook, just the manner of the defeat, when you build up a good lead and you've established yourself well, they just couldn't get back out in there, and they get into the arm wrestle. And again, once it got too hard, it got too hard. Keep saying that, but that's the same for so many teams in this competition who sit in the second half. I thought outside of the obvious ones for Manly, the return of Dylan Walker has been significant of late. Both Morgan Harper and the other centre, Brad Parker. I think they've established themselves there. But Dylan Walker is an Origin player. He's deputised at fullback. He can play in the centres. Obviously, plays in the halves well. Saw him at first receiver a lot. He actually, in Manly's run towards finals football, and they will play finals, he's actually going to be the perfect number 14 or 15 for them, because he covers so many different positions. That touch of class air, the flick pass to Daly Cherry Evans shows what Dylan Walker can do, and
he fits in that mould of that new style sort of lock forward, doesn't he?
Yeah. Well, he can play anywhere. Yeah. That's the beauty of him, and when I say anywhere, he doesn't just deputise in the centres. He's a quality centre. At fullback, I think he'd bring plenty of quality there when Tom's away as well, and he's played plenty of football at 5'8" as well. But you put him in the back row, it's a good point. So Manly are getting players back. We're getting young players emerging, but Dylan Walker. Now, he's experienced. He's played at high levels. He's played there for a long, long time. So to have him as somebody who can come into the game at any time and really add to their performance, it's another plus for them. They've got plenty of pluses going at the moment.
Early game Friday, Sharks 26 over the Cowboys 24. A close encounter, this one. It was up for grabs late in the game. Both teams could have won it. It was the Sharks with a bit of experience getting there in the end.
Yeah, it was a weird game. The Cowboys looked out of it, and then they got back into it, and then they looked out of it and stormed home late in the game. But the Sharks now 4 wins in a row, playing some nice football, and they may be the team that's going to continue that run. And
Johnson and Moylan there in the halves.
Well, and I like the forwards too. Talakai coming back in the side is very strong. Toby Rudolph, great every week. They've got good finishes out wide. Will Kennedy's very, very dangerous out the back. So they've got a lot going for them. And I think it made the point, and I probably thought it might have gone that way. I thought once you change your coach and your experienced players are told they're not part of the future, that could go awry. But they've actually reacted really positively to it, and it's credit to them. So, they've got on a bit of a roll here at the moment. Against a side, I can't quite get my head around the Cowboys. I love what I see at times. But then, last week, the week before, when they got trounced, and then this was a winnable game for them, but they just never quite to do it. And I've got to say, a couple of disappointing efforts from their Origin players. Kyle Felt, he's got a great kick-off, but when you've got an acre of space, you can't get it wrong.
No.
Because just after that, Aaron Woods storms his way across. And then Valentine Holmes, their other Origin player, brings the ball out, loses it in a tackle, and from the scrum, the Sharks score from that. When you come back from Origin, you've got to bring your best, which is hopefully going to be infectious and contagious to your teammates. Now, those errors were really, really costly for the North Queensland side, and I expect better from their leading players, especially when they're coming back from rep footy, because you have to lead the way.
Saturday afternoon, a critical win for Newcastle. 10-6 over the Warriors. Mitchell Pearce back in the lineup, and they jag a couple of points. But Pete, I've got to say, I haven't been watching football quite as long as you. The best covering tackle I've ever seen.
Now, well, hang on. Before we get there, last year, Papali'i running down Jamal Fogarty.
Mate, you
right
could
up
outrun
there.
Jamal Fogarty, even now with your wonky leg.
I don't know if would I get Josh Papali'i, but no, that was huge. What about Xavier Coates on
that was a good
Dane
one.
Gagai?
That was a
couple
good
of
one.
days previous.
But Jaden Brayley's a hooker.
I'll run with you. Okay, Newcastle, in unbelievable conditions up there, needed these types of plays. And Jaden Brayley came up with this effort after the football goes down to Walsh, and we're going to show you where Brayley is. This is a speedster.
He's a hooker.
Getting down the outside. There's Jaden Brayley. Continuing to chase, too much pace for Kurt Mann.
Here he comes.
Now, even a little bit of footwork there would have beaten most players. So he came up with great. But backing that up this is the lead-up play to the winning try. You've got Tuala through the middle. He finds Connor Watson on his shoulder. Now, Tuivasa-Sheck comes up with a great tackle, but he's the right winger. The Knights know that if they get the ball to the left, they'll score. The pass from Brayley is a beauty. It's what we call an outball, and an outball is one that nullifies the defender coming up, who is Ewan Aitken, who's a very good defender. But it puts Mitchell Pearce on his outside, and that develops a 3-on-1 on the outside. If the pass to Mitchell Pearce from Jaden Brayley is one that allows Ewan Aitken to make the tackle, they don't score. They probably get a penalty, maybe Ewan Aitken offside. But the pass was so good. On the back of that try-saving tackle and throwing the ball, which took advantage of the situation and did it perfectly. Then Jaden Brayley was an absolute star for them.
But to my mate Scott Sattler, that's better. You've been beaten in the cover tackle stakes. That's a better tackle than Sats.
Grand final. That's
mate, Todd Byrne, again, you'd beat Todd Byrne.
So now you're bagging Todd Byrne, who it might not be the fastest.
Do you reckon Reece Walsh should beat Todd Byrne in a foot race?
He might get him.
I'm glad you highlighted Jaden Brayley, because in a Newcastle team that struggled this year, he's been an absolute standout.
The other big standout in that game, of course, was the return of Mitchell Pearce. He slotted in very, very nicely. And it's such an important win for Newcastle, who've been poor of late. But get a confidence booster out of that one. David Clemmer was back as well. Rare starting spot for both Jacob and Daniel Saifidi, and they were great. Daniel Saifidi, absolutely outstanding. Played the full first half and actually started the second half as well. So a lot to like out of the Newcastle performance on what was a tough afternoon, and I was glad that I was sitting up watching the game from the commentary box instead of being out there, because it was a tough afternoon.
Yes, well, I had the pleasure of calling this next game for radio in the studio, thankfully. Down in Wollongong, a shocking afternoon. The Dragons were hopeless in the first 15 minutes. Hopeless. And Canberra, with a lead at half-time, you think, they should go on to win this. Well, once again, I think it's the 7th time this year that they've sacrificed a double-figure lead and lost 22-20. The halves for the Dragons, they were pretty ordinary in the first half, but in the second half, they used that breeze at their back to brilliant effect, and they were really good closing that game out.
Yeah, it's taken a long time, but I finally got the pen out in regard to Canberra playing finals. Look, they gave me hope last week, but this was a game that they had to win. I keep pointing out that these are 4-point games. So when you are playing teams that you are going to be contesting maybe 6th, 7th or 8th position with, then you've got to win them, because the 2 points that you lose and the 2 pick up, that makes it very difficult. And there are so many of the teams in that position. I'm just not seeing enough from the Canberra Rays. I thought it'd be there. I thought if their main players, they led up by 12 on 2 occasions in this game. They led 12-0 and they led 20 points to 8 and still couldn't get the job done.
So they're gone. Canberra gone. Season over.
I don't think they play finals now, and I had them in the grand final, then I had them playing finals, but I'm running out of steam with them. I can't, they can't keep leading and blowing what should be match-winning leads when you've got the quality in their roster. So, I don't think they'll be there. How am I going to say that they're going to finish in front of the Sharks, who have found something? They've 4 in a row. That's not easy to do in this competition.
But you're sitting there waiting for Canberra to click. That's what you've been waiting for.
I have been, and I thought it started last week. But no, look, maybe it'll be the Dragons who make the run. And I'm not surprised that Ben Hunt has been called up into Origin on the back of this performance. He was outstanding. There's always an error or two in Ben's game, but when you're looking for the class touches, it's generally Ben Hunt that's going to supply them or be involved in the important moves of the game, and that was certainly the case in this one. And I think for Queensland, he'll come in and he might play some dummy half, or he might just play that roving role as another playmaker, and he's well versed in that at Origin level. And I think if the Queensland selectors had any doubt about bringing him into the 17, then maybe just that 40-20. No, that's not 40-20. What do you call it, Rainy? I think it was a 19-1 or something, wasn't it?
That was, I mean, that's experience. That was a huge breeze at their back. Canberra didn't use that in the first half. As soon as the Dragons ran the other way, they were kicking early and playing field position, and that's obviously on the back of Ben Hunt's smarts.
Yeah, and he's enjoying football under Anthony Griffin. And Anthony Griffin has come out and said, look, I know how to get the best out of this bloke. And on most occasions this season, Ben Hunt's been tremendous and was great again for them in a very important match against the Canberra Raiders.
Sunday Ovo footy, Eels 36, Bulldogs 10. Bulldogs lead 10-6 at half-time, but Para far too good in the second half. I think it started with the professional foul just after half-time.
Well, it started just before that, where the Bulldogs, it was the same play. The Bulldogs on the last tackle threw the ball into Dylan Napa, who was in between the halves, who were going to kick the football. That's when Mitchell Moses picked it up, and I think it was
Nick Mooney, was it? No,
I think it was either Brandon Wakeham or Jake Avarillo. I should know that, one of the halves who grabbed him, but I was probably too busy watching Mitchell Moses. I think it was a fair decision. I think with his speed and leading by that far and that close to the line, it was a penalty try. From that moment on, Parramatta just dominated. Really, I thought that Parramatta were poor in the first half, and the fact they came up with 6 or 7 errors, only one incompletion in the second half. I think they had the ball 24 times in the second half, and once they got on a roll, the points started to come. Sean Russell, outstanding in his first game. Congratulations to the young man on a double first up. But I thought they controlled the game in the second half. And Trent Barrett came out and he was very disappointed with the stats out of this game. The 6 games were very much against his side, but you find that when the opposition team has all the football. Now, it was clear that the Bulldogs were struggling to play the ball down, and you give those away. So there might have been a couple in there that I thought were harsh on the Bulldogs, but overall, when the momentum is fully against you, that's when you give away a lot of 6 games and you give away a lot of penalties, of course, because you're doing your damnedest to try and slow things down. And Parramatta, they were too good. They're a second half team. The stats say that if they lead at half-time, which they didn't in this game, but if they lead at half-time, they haven't been beaten this year. And I think if they're close enough of half-time, then that's, the points tend to come their way, and they set it up in the first 40 and they finish things off nicely in the second.
All right, a week to put the feet up for the club players. Origin Day Sunday, live and exclusive here on 9. Coverage from 7 p.m. from Suncorp. Plus, 9 now, you can get the extra angles. You can even watch the whole game through Spider-Cam, which would be a great experience, I'd reckon. You'd see a lot of stuff you wouldn't normally see through the regular coverage. You've got coach cams as well and specific player cams. So check that out, 9 now for Origin on Sunday. Blues to wrap it up?
I think so, but we'll see a very different game to what we saw in Game 1. Much tighter, and I think it'll be a real contest. So I think the Blues can wrap it up there, but we've seen before, Origin history tells us that when one side gets pumped, the next game is a whole different affair. So I think the Blues can win that, and we've got the women's State of Origin coming up as well. And,
Friday night, yep.
And that'll be a chance for the Blues to get back what they lost last year in that title.
All right, rep round and all the action here on 9. Look forward to reviewing Origin next week.